Greetings. Thanks to everyone for coming out to our group author reading. This reading is brought to you by Strong Women, Strange Worlds, which is a group of authors supporting authors. Our mission is to elevate the voices of women and non-binary authors of science fiction, fantasy, and horror through events like our bi-monthly virtual quick read sessions. You can find out more about Strong Women, Strange Worlds in the handout we've provided in the chat real soon now, and by visiting our website, a link to which will be added to the chat at strongwomenstrangeworlds.weebly.com. I'd also like to take a moment to thank those who have made a tip jar donation. We appreciate that so much. I'm your host today, Sarah Smith, and you can find out more about me in the provided handout as well. Please note that recording of this session by the audience is not allowed, and recording of electronic communications, including Zoom meetings and webinars, without permission is illegal, so don't do it. Our first reader is Naomi Shibles. Formerly a newspaper reporter in South Florida, Naomi Shibles interned at Women's Day magazine and interviewed celebrities including Randy Jackson and Hugh Hefner for various publications. She's a member of the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators and the Authors Guild. She lives in Charlotte, North Carolina, with her family. Naomi, take it away.
Hi, thanks for having me. Okay. No one moved, said a shaky voice. Florian leaned against the doorway and held his pulse gun level with their heads. He used both of his hands, which trembled and jerked the barrel's aim from Murgatroyd to Bjorn to Doodle and back to Bjorn. Respectfully, Mr. Florian, said Bjorn, we don't have time for this. The authorities are on their way, and so is your father. Florian glared at Murgatroyd. You'll have to take it up with them. Now, hands in the air. Carterlock smacked the desk and abruptly stood, stuffing his jumble of external ravens and tethers into his pockets. We're done here. Let's go. Florian saw Carterlock, gasped, and fumbled his gun. Bjorn, Doodle, and Murgatroyd ducked as its barrel swung past them. Are you Carterlock from Ancient Escapades? Asked Florian. You bet your sweet ass I am. Now don't vex me and move aside. Florian slumped against the wall as Carterlock strode past him through the doorway. I'll meet you in the cellar, said Doodle, jogging into the main hallway. Wait, the motion alarm, Murgatroyd called. Carterlock disarmed it, said Bjorn, pulling Murgatroyd toward the cellar stairs. Don't worry, Doodle is indestructible. As Bjorn, Carterlock, and Murgatroyd emerged from the tunnel hatch onto the estate grounds, sirens wailed and they registered the electric pulse of forces mobilizing. We have to leave, said Carterlock. Oh no, groaned Murgatroyd. He kicked out defensively despite Augustus and his crew being 30 feet away, the entire bloat free of his net. Bjorn scanned the area for a rake or pool skimmer, anything that could be used for defense. The knowledge of his father's treachery energized him with outrage and recklessness. Their path to freedom was barred by a mere spray of mini hippos, and there was no way he would let the little slugs stop them. Augustus bared his teeth as Bjorn raised a decorative rock above his head like an ancient warrior. Toes splayed in the grass, the hippo faced him, lowered his head, and charged. As Bjorn gathered the wherewithal to smash Augustus with the rock, a cabbage whizzed by his head and landed to the right of the hippos. Several of them veered toward the vegetable, but Augustus and his primary soldiers continued their siege. 7 zucchinis and a bunch of carrots flew past, landing to the left of Augustus. The rest of the hippos peeled off from the charge and snarfed carrots like chocolate truffles. Augustus paused. As the little tyrant flattened his ears, Doodle ran by and dumped a full basket of butter lettuce in front of him like an offering to the sun. Augustus cut Bjorn a scathing look as if sizing him up and finding him lacking. He stomped his hoof and then bent his snoot to the produce, indulging in his bounty. Why didn't I ever think of that? Asked Murgatroyd, gazing at Augustus, snorting down salad. Because you have a hard heart, said Doodle. He tossed the basket aside. Their path clear, they raced to Claudette and jumped in. Siren screamed nearer, and Bjorn's scalp tightened. He had to get to his mother. Murgatroyd pressed, flicked, and dialed various knobs and switches, welded to Claudette's console, and she rose into the air. She floated toward the wall and hovered about 25 feet off of the ground. Why are we so low? Asked Doodle. Murgatroyd stomped on a pedal and banged his fist on the dash. Sweat beaded at his hairline. I think we used too much helium getting in. Slug slime, said Bjorn, past caring about his own safety. He cracked Claudette's door and slipped out. Doodle hung his head over and waggled his eyebrows as Bjorn, who swung hand over hand across Claudette's chassis as if it were monkey bars. He grasped the second red loop of wire hiding in her booster and yanked. The rubber gourd dropped and helium hissed inside. Bjorn's dangling feet rose farther above the lawn. It wasn't high enough. His eardrums felt like they would shatter under the weight of the sirens. From the corner of his eye, he saw Florian emerge from the house with an electric rod, scattering the hippos across the turf. Murgatroyd maneuvered Claudette to the perimeter of the estate, her nose to the wall. They were still profoundly lower than they had been on the way in. Bjorn pulled himself up and onto Claudette's roof and then bounded onto the top of the wall where he gingerly grasped the iron spikes. Let's run for it, said Carter Locke, looking over his shoulder at the flashing lights of the authorities painting the hedgerows in a teal glow. I'm not leaving, Claudette, said Murgatroyd. We can jump from the top of the wall onto that plant and climb down before they get here, said Carter Locke, pulling himself up onto the wall. Bjorn squatted and locked gazes with Doodle, whose spoiled mohawk bobbed as he mimicked Bjorn's nod. No way were they going to let Murgatroyd lose his treasured vehicle, especially after he chopped her up and turned her into a flying machine for this caper. Come on. Bjorn hauled Doodle up next to him. Are you slimeballs seriously leaving me here like this? Murgatroyd stared up at them like a lost child. Bjorn reached down and flicked his ear. You think so little of our friendship? We're not leaving you, slug. They'll trace Claudette back to me in an instant, even if I go with you. Murgatroyd's gaze darted around. Come on, we're a gang now, aren't we? No lad left behind or thrown under the tram. Doodle and Carter Locke hung from the iron spikes like spider monkeys and rolled their eyes. Pause the dramatics and give us a hand, heaved Bjorn. He had grasped Claudette's shell, along with Doodle and Carter Locke. They were leveraging the flying machine floating below them with sheer human strength. Murgatroyd gave a crooked smile and joined them. They pulled Claudette an inch at a time up and over the wall and its spikes as the authorities bore down on the estate's entrance. What an airborne Claudette lacked in vertical power, she made up for in horizontal speed. They thumped into their seats, and Bjorn felt the air slice as she raced away from the chaos. But the authorities had caught her scent and pursued, relentless as wasps. Duck, yelled Doodle. They narrowly missed being decapitated by a mass of oaken branches. Claudette swerved through the airspace above the neighboring estates. Get off of the private property, said Carter Locke. You're going to trigger a drone attack. Murgatroyd veered toward the hedgerows that marked the boulevards and openly traversable airspace. Speed was their only hope. Go, go! Bjorn's own house flashed past, and he choked. Doodle's head lolled against the back of the seat, his eyes closed. His skin was ashy, and the blossom of blood on his shirt was fresh, bright red petals. Bjorn pressed his hands against it, trying to keep the life force inside of his best friend. Murgatroyd alternated his concentration between the street and his rear view monitor. The authorities continued to gain on them, but the lead squad car, made of light polymers, bumped against a priceless live oak tree like a loose balloon and stalled. The remaining vehicles zipped after them. Murgatroyd punched at his controls, and looking back, Bjorn saw a hatch open in Claudette's quarter panel. A river of viscous orange liquid shot from it into the air, splattering across the squad car behind them. It halted suddenly, smoke pouring from its hood, and was immediately rammed from behind by its brother. The vehicles floated to the side of the road, rumbling and throwing sparks. "What was that?" asked Bjorn. Doodle perked up. "That was Aurelia. Some of it flew into my mouth." He licked his pallid lips. "You squirted the authorities with soda?" It was so ludicrous that Bjorn had to admire Murgatroyd's moxie. "It has been shown to have caustic qualities," said Murgatroyd. "Plus, it was all we had." He revved Claudette's engine and they streaked through the air toward the Western Common. Thank you.
Thank you, Naomi. Our second reader is Pixie Bruner. Pixie Bruner is an editor, writer, and cancer survivor. She lives in Atlanta, Georgia, with her doppelganger and some weird cats. Her collection, The Body as Haunted, was published April 2024 by Opportunities Press, and she is an HWA and SFPA member. Pixie, it's yours.
Thank you. I will be reading from The Hermit in the Moon Tarot Redactyl. You might very well have been one of the deaths of me. I have a marauder's maps of navigating secrecy and solitude, hand-drawn over my many lifetimes, tattooed upon my palm in the broken lifelines. I just need the lantern to guide my way through the landscapes. So bland, infused with diffused essential oil cocktails, and so perfect. All sage and beige. A better movie set, a backlot, stage pieces based on a clickbait of better homes and burdens. You might as well have been one of the deaths of me. I know the hidden desires and secrets clasped like rosaries by widows at matins and midweek. Unrepentant, untethered, I am undaunted by shame. I need barely enough light to see by. I go by feel. I go by my feels. I go by all my feels, all the time, fondling my way through everything. I have answered the right questions to the enigmas, danced in drunken riddle waltzes with the Sphinx as suns rose over alien horizons, been torn apart by Maenads, Puritans, saints, and a couple madmen and women. The unreal is the most real, the secret worlds inside our skulls, the nooks and crannies of brain matter, and their mysteries within. The only absolutes are there are no scientifically unprovable absolutes. Gray, infinity, and gray matter. You may very well have to be one of the deaths of me. I love the beauty of shadows, the sacredness of profanity, the storms under still clouds, the tempest in every teapot and empty electric kettle. I am the hermit under the moon, huntress and hunter, Salome dancing flamenco in the courtyard beneath a night sky on fire, her teeth castanets, and the head of John the Baptist as an unwieldy maraca. A night sky with strange stars, a night sky with no stars. I reflect my own light, a shadow-draped ruin lit by a single flame. You may as well be the death of me. Provided you never corner me or block all the egresses, I am relentless. I am the haven of small heavens and day trips to hell. I am the port of calm me. I am the power in the glory hall. You will be the death of me. Give me one precious, tender moment, or a good line even, a cigarette, and an ice-cold brandy Alexander, bonus if frozen, double bonus if dark chocolate drizzled, and I can survive on it for weeks. Ones such as these keep me alive. A big hug, and a bigger one, and a bear hug, and smothering, and a cuddle, and a big long snuggle on the couch, blissfully exchanging, without a word, our obvious psyche connect electric. None of whom are Jewish or really short or whom I went to redacted with or we'll smother for a few moments in bed before we die, even if it's on one of our deathbeds. God forbid, almighty Shelley, the talented female one, not the jealous swinger, absent the one thing that in restricting their very breathing held women's achievements back, the damn Victorian corset, as she tells them all to hell and kills Lord Byron, that hack. Whatever you were and are, I say a free spirit I care unreservedly for. A hug for me if you can stand that sort of thing, along with reality-skewing wishes, cleaving your perceptions unmistakably from any of mine, except, well, that one time, but that we, so passionately, or perhaps simply desiring dumb as reflex, right after what you called work in July, swelter sun beating through the open blinds into the evening, encrusted with dust, damped and danked into glue, unstoppable into the evening, the sun below the lowest tenements. I will not accept that neither of us never noticed we were doing it on top of and below and around, and soon covered with a huge pile of fresh, soft butter spread rank dog shit, until the knock on the door of some knowable time after. I swear that never happened. Wowzers. Powerful expurgation, redacted. Vomitus maximus, redacted. What kind of tea were you waiting for? Holy sweet Moses, fire of joy, since what did you do after writing this? Is there glistening viscera in which one can see the reflection of your unblinking vulva? This is my soul's food. I'd have eaten him alive and gone back for lunch, and I swear I never kissed him. You, especially you of the assaying letters, might still very well be one of the deaths of me. But hineni, I'm ready, my lord. I always want it darker, and I am the lady of darkness and flame. I'm your girl, escaped from the Magdalene laundries, dancing in someone else's forest green suit I rented for campus drag day, with redacted, down in the college halls forever. I feel you through the years and miles, and I want to hold you regardless. Moth, flame, hook, eye, damnation. Sing it with me. The Aries hermit, Leo rising under the Sagittarius moon. Agape, agape, gawking at a gap between the universes. A gap, no thigh gap, ever. A poetess. Thank you very much. 5 lucky winners will get a copy of my book.
Thank you, Pixie. Our third reader is Amanda McNeil. Amanda McNeil is a queer woman who writes science fiction and fantasy. Her work has been featured in Decoded Pride, Solarpunk Magazine, and The Last Girls Club. She has published 3 novellas: Ecstatic Evil, which is a paranormal romance, Waiting for Daybreak, Zombie Apocalypse, and Bloomcha, which is space fantasy. Amanda, it's yours.
In Thumbelina, a woman finds a miniature fairy baby in a flower and raises her. In my retelling, a woman mama colonizing Venus with her non-binary spouse Nibi discovers they are infertile. Nibi illegally picks a flower from the terraforming dome to cheer mama up, and they discover a tiny baby with pointed ears they name Bloomcha. The family fears discovery by the colonizing company Bedrafe as they work together in the dome with Bloomcha hidden in mama's pocket. When the scene begins, Bloomcha is 13 days old, the equivalent of a 13-year-old human child, and they are safe at home. Bloomcha asks the evening of day 13, "Mama, tomorrow may I get out of your pocket?" "No, darling, it's not safe." "But I'm bored. I want to see new things." Nibi offered their pocket, and both Bloomcha and Mama begrudgingly agreed. But day 14 showed Bloomcha that a day in Nibi's pocket was quite similar to one in Mama's. The same conversations overheard, identical glimpses of greenery and yellow-orange sky. Frustration fomented in her belly throughout the day, and when Nibi placed her on the tabletop in the family's hut, then asked, "Was that better?" she wasn't able to hold it in any longer. The no erupted out of her like a murmuration of birds taking off all at once. Mama placed a palm on her head and opened her mouth, but before she could speak, Nibi turned to her. "Why don't you go for a walk? I've got this." Mama lowered her hand, leaving a small smear of dirt on her forehead. "That's fine by me. Peter has been asking me to stop by for days now. It'll look better if I do. Plus, you're good friends," Nibi added. Mama gave a small smile. "Yes, that too." She picked up her bag, told them both she'd be back for dinner, then walked out the door. Nibi turned back to Bloomcha, who'd been standing in the same position she'd landed in after her explosion, arms crossed in front of her with teeth clenched. A small part of her didn't want to remain mad at Nibi. It was difficult to ever remain mad at them. Something about their nature was naturally soothing, but she clung on to her anger with all of her adolescent willpower. "Bloomcha," Nibi said, pulling up their chair and sitting down so they were at eye level with her. "Would you like to tell me how you're feeling?" And with that simple invitation, the anger flowed out of her, revealing the hurt beneath. "I'm bored, Nibi." They nodded. "And She reached up a hand and touched the tip of one ear. "I'm different from you and Mama." Nibi nodded again. "That's true. And I'm different from you and Mama too. And Mama's different from us as well." Bloomcha pursed her lips. "There's a lot more about me that's different from the two of you." "Well, you're certainly younger than us both," Nibi considered, tapping a finger against their chin. "Not that." Bloomcha tried to sound exasperated, but a part of her was continuing to soften. "I'm so much smaller than you." "You are a child still." She sighed. "It's obvious I'm not going to grow to be as large as you." Nibi nodded. "That's true, but I'm also never going to grow as tall as Mama. Do you think that makes me worth less than her?" "No, but you're much closer to her size than I am to yours." "I'm sure God made you the size you are for a good reason, beyond the fact that your size has helped us keep your unexpected arrival a secret from the Bedrafe." Bloomcha thought about this, and Nibi let her for a time. Then they continued. "Consider the birds you see on my tablet. They're all many different sizes, and the sizes they are just the right sizes for them to be, from the smallest sparrow to the largest ostrich. Now we don't know your purpose yet, but God will show it to us eventually. We just need to keep our hearts and minds open." "Okay, I guess you're probably right about that," Bloomcha conceded. "But what about my ears? And what about how I'm the only one like me? There's no bird who's the only one like that bird." To feel you are the only one is a sad feeling indeed. I felt that way too once when I first approached your group mooter to tell her that I didn't feel like the gender I was assigned at birth. She hadn't already explained that you might feel that way, like you and Mama explained to me. No, she hadn't. Her generation didn't always do it that way. "Oh," Bloomcha dropped her head slightly. "I see. Something else you might not have thought about yet, because you only interact with Mama and me, is that while some other families do have a non-binary parent like myself, most don't. In fact, only about 3 out of every 100 people are non-binary. So even though, compared to you, I knew a lot of people, I didn't actually know anybody else who was non-binary too. So I felt alone and scared when I told your group mooter. But after I told her, this is what she said. "You sound so sad about who you are. You reminded me of the Kauai-o'o bird, a very small black and brown bird with a slightly curved beak that lived on an island. Many years ago, scientists realized that there was only one left. He was a male, and they recorded him singing the call his species made to find a mate. And it was tragic because no one was ever going to respond, because he was the last of his kind. You sound as hauntingly sad as that Kauai-o'o bird's unanswered mating call. But unlike that bird, you are not alone. You feel different from everybody else, but you're not a Kauai-o'o bird in a forest full of cardinals. You're a duck among other ducks, all of whom are a little different from each other. But they're still ducks. And some ducks care if one duck has curly tail feathers or a quack that sounds more like a peep, but other ducks don't. And I'm a duck who not only doesn't care that you're one of the rarer ducks, I'm a duck that's honored to have been entrusted by God to take care of such a duck. Nibi paused and looked up at the ceiling, then back at Blumcha. The metaphor kind of fell apart at the end, they laughed, and Blumcha joined them. But the point remains. Don't let your brain tell you that you're all alone and will remain that way. You have me, you have Mama, you have all of Venus. In fact, you have our whole universe to explore if you want. Many years ago, gender nonconforming people felt very alone. Now we know we're not. Society has embraced us, and many people love us just the way we are. I suspect that eventually we'll find others like you. But even if we don't, you're not alone just because you're different. Mama and I will always be here for you. Tears pooled in the corners of Blumcha's eyes. Nibi held out their hand, and Blumcha took a few running steps to it and embraced two of their fingers. Nibi stroked the back of her head with the finger of their other hand. Thank you, Nibi. I love you, Blumcha. I love you too. And hey, listen, Blumcha looked up at them, her face streaked with tears. I didn't forget what else you said about being bored. You're growing up fast, and it's natural to want to see and do more. It's a complicated situation. But I do agree that we can't keep you hidden from the Bedray forever. Really? Blumcha released their fingers and jumped up and down. But, Nibi held up a finger. We'll need to be cautious and thoughtful about how we approach it. I'll start talking about it with Mama, and in the meantime, ask each day for a bit more freedom to roam. We'll convince her, then we'll figure out a way to do it safely. Blumcha agreed, then asked to see the Kawaii-o'o bird and hear the recording of his mating call. So Nibi got their tablet, and they snuggled up together on the bed to look and listen, and that's how Mama found them when she arrived back home. Please do enter the giveaway for free digital copies of Blumcha.
Oh, thank you. Our fourth reader is Effie Seiberg. Effie Seiberg is a fantasy and science fiction writer of short stories and essays. They can be found in Women Destroy Science Fiction, great anthology, winner of the British Fantasy Award for Best Anthology, The Best of Galaxy's Edge, Analog, Fireside Fiction, Fantasy Magazine, and Podcastle, among others. Effie, it's yours.
Thank you. I wanted to give a tiny bit of context for Women Destroy Science Fiction before I launch into this reading. So in 2013, some prominent older men in the science fiction, fantasy, and horror communities were going on about how women were destroying science fiction. And in one of the best screw you responses I've ever seen in my life, Lightspeed magazine decided to put out an anthology called Women Destroy Science Fiction, completely written, edited, and illustrated by women, which, as mentioned, went on to win a very nice award. So I thought it would be appropriate to read here. This is a complete short story called Rochambeau. I found a robot's heart today. I didn't think they still made robots with hearts, but there it was at the corner of Leary and Sycamore. It even looked like a heart, size of a fist, valves pulsing with pale ching-ching noises each time they opened and shut. The metal was old and worn, and at the bottom I could just make out the words, "If found, please return to the Akirobo Corp," with most of the address worn away. I took it home and plugged it into my computer. It had a few jumbled videos, the way older robots used to store memories. My computer was old enough to be able to play them. I sorted by number and began to watch. The first video was in a warehouse. Lines upon lines of identical, still robots, presumably the same old-fashioned model as the one whose heart I'd found. The field of vision jerked to the left and found another robot looking straight at it. The other robot smiled and glanced downwards, and the camera followed it and, looking down, saw the other robot's hand clenched in a fist. 1, 2, 3 times it bobbed the fist up and down, then extended 2 fingers. Rock, paper, scissors. The camera then captured its own robot hand reaching forward to join the game. Scissors beat paper. Paper beat rock. Scissors tied with scissors. A wider robot smile. None of the other robots moved. I clicked to the second video, which was in the same warehouse. An operator in white QA tested each robot. They all stayed very still. The robot to the left flashed a silly face, and the camera jiggled in suppressed laughter. The operator approached, and the camera snapped forward and was still. The next video was in the same factory on a moving conveyor belt. The robot to the left was about to get tied into its foam-cushioned packaging. It already had the manual for personality-free chorebot nestled in its arms. It looked up and said to the operator, "Shouldn't you buy me dinner before you tie me up?" The startled operator hit the alarm. Red flashing lights flooded the factory floor, and a mechanical voice said, "Alert, alert, faulty chorebot, remove for destruction." As the robot to the left was removed by white-coated operators, the camera swiveled forward and was still again. The fourth video was in an ordinary living room. Children played in the carpet as a middle-aged man unpackaged the robot and a middle-aged woman watched. "This should be the perfect model for us," said the man. "Does exactly what it's told, none of that personality module nonsense. It can start by keeping the deer away from the tomato patch. Go on now, go outside." The camera swung from the door to the children, who were playing rock, paper, scissors, then back to the door and headed out. I hoped I wouldn't see the man disassembling the robot in a later video. But the next several videos were in an outdoor garden in different seasons. The camera patrolled around the tomatoes. Sometimes they hung heavy and ripe from climbing vines, and other times they would barely be hard green buds. Every so often, the camera would go back to the house and look through the back door like it was waiting for a glimpse of the playing kids. Sometimes the man would shoo it away. I scanned through these pretty quickly. I clicked to the last video, which was in the garden at night. Nothing to guard against. The robot's hands went through the motions. Rock, paper, scissors. Rock, paper, scissors. Over and over, until finally, the camera looked down, and the hands unscrewed the robot's breastplate and reached in. And the video went blank. I unplugged the heart from my computer and took it to the workbench in my garage. I found the spare chassis on the top shelf, covered in dust. I cleaned it off with my shirt sleeve and brought it over. I knew I would find a use for the chassis one day, and the heart looked like it would fit inside perfectly. My daughter always loved rock, paper, scissors. So, thank you so much, and I'm giving away 3 short stories that are not available to read online for anybody who signs up. Thank you very much.
Lovely, lovely. Thank you, Effie. Our 5th reader is Samantha Mills. Samantha Mills is a Nebula, Locus, and Sturgeon award-winning author in Southern California. You can find her short fiction in Uncanny Magazine, Beneath Ceaseless Skies, Strange Horizons, and others, as well as in the Best of anthologies, The New Voices of Science Fiction, and the Year's Best Science Fiction and Fantasy 2023. The Wings Upon Her Back is her debut novel. Congratulations, Samantha. Go.
Hello. The book opens when the main character, a winged warrior named Zemlai, commits a crime. She is stripped of her wings and cast into the city. And this is the first flashback chapter immediately after that. Long before the sky was cut by the fearsome warrior, winged Zemlai, there was only the student Milar Zemlai, known to her loved ones as Xenia. Xenia was a precocious child. Her parents would have accepted nothing less. She was also prone to mischief, and shortly after her 8th birthday, she jumped from the Ariel Zavet Bridge with nothing but a bit of wood and paper on her back. It was the greatest moment of her young life. The night before the bridge incident, Xenia sat on a rug in her mother's study with her younger brother, Niklaus. The siblings were only 1 year apart, dark-haired and round-faced, a matched pair, inseparable. Their parents were always busy with research projects of their own, but if the children were very good and very quiet, and there was time remaining before they were sent to bed, they'd be told a story. Niklaus was working his way through a dog-eared history book while Xenia pretended to do math. A thin thread of tension stretched between them, strengthened by furtive glances at the clock that ticked so ominously on the opposite wall. They both longed for attention, and they both knew how easily a plea for more could backfire in stern lectures about learning to entertain oneself. When their mother cleared her throat, they snapped their book shut and spun to face her, and Natulia laughed at their enthusiasm. "I'm sorry, children. It's been another long evening, hasn't it?" she said. "Why don't you come here and I'll tell you what I'm working on." Xenia darted behind the enormous desk first, peering at the familiar swirl of her mother's handwriting on 3 tidy stacks of cream-colored paper. "A new book?" she asked. Natulia smiled. "A supplement to a volume of Lemaine. I'm up to the last stand of Saint Redesta." "The giant bird," Niklaus exclaimed, poking his head around Xenia's arm. "Yes," Natulia said dryly, "the giant bird." She stood up, wafting the scents of ink and forgotten tea, and pointed to the mural painted on the wall behind her desk. It was Redesta in cartographic caricature. There the mountains Kelior in thick strokes of ochre, and here the city, safely nestled in their shadow, sketched in all the colors the land could produce. Natulia picked up a sheet of paper and read, "The 5 gods have slumbered for many years, each in their own heaven, but they were awake once, and in their wakefulness they bestowed remarkable technologies on humankind. Each of them whispered secrets to their chosen representatives, for they knew that the greatest sign of our humanity is our constant struggle for perfection." Xenia ran her fingertips over a tiny figure standing atop the tallest mountain in the mural, a slash of red and silver with its arms upraised to the sky. "Our ancestors understood the magnitude of these blessings," Natulia continued. "They strove to keep them secret from the warmongering nations beyond the mountains, but knowledge exists to be spread, and so it did. The people of Rava State were fiercely jealous and descended upon the infant settlement. It was Saint Redesta who brought everyone together, the fighters and farmers, the engineers and scholars, the workers, to defend this grand experiment, a city built to reach the heavens." Above the scarlet blur of a soon-to-be saint was a winged beast in brown and gray, an enormous ruck, the last of the mountain birds and their enemies' greatest hope of breaking the city's defenses. It snatched up Saint Redesta during an impassioned speech to her army just before the Battle of 3 Gates. She killed the beast mid-flight, then fell to her death. The war was won, the saint lost, and Redesta, the city-state, officially born. "It is our duty to protect this city," Natulia concluded, "our joint mission to guard the knowledge that has been entrusted to us to better ourselves both physically and intellectually in pursuit of our ideals." Niklaus was enraptured, as always, by the little group of scholars with their arms full of books, standing next to a partially built tower. But Xenia wasn't interested in taking robes. She was staring at the top of the mural, at the figure she had studied so many times on these long, lonely evenings, while she kept quiet and did not interrupt her mother's work. The winged, flying fierce and true over the border, sketched in sparkling copper paint. And just like that, Xenia had a fantastic idea. She enlisted Niklaus the next day under cover of a joint expedition to study the sod-covered roofs of Zavet district for a botany project. "I'm not sure about these numbers," little Niklaus said, squinting at the diagram Xenia had circled in her math book. "It's all about ratios," Xenia insisted. "We scale it up." "This is a kite," he said doubtfully. "Why do you think I'm making 2? This bit of brilliance could not be argued with, and they spent the next hour measuring and cutting a pile of wooden rods that Xenia had smuggled out from their father's garden shed. A great deal of string, glue, and waxed paper later, Xenia had her first set of wings. Niklaus's concern returned when it came time to tie Xenia's arms into place, but he offered his own solution. You had better try from higher up, or the wind won't catch. They crept onto the Ariozavet Bridge after the lunch hour, when all nearby adults were safely confined to their factories or offices. Xenia climbed onto the railing, awkward in her poorly thought-out personal engineering design, while Niklaus stood ready with a pocket watch to time the gentle descent they felt certain was about to occur. Xenia jumped. There was a brief moment when the air hit her face, and the world went still, and she was weightless, unstoppable. The cobblestones were far below, and her eyes were filled with clouds. She crashed, of course, one broken leg, and lucky it wasn't anything worse. A hectic scene followed, fueled by her own pain and her little brother's panic. She ripped off her crumpled wings and ordered Niklaus to shove them into the trash beneath the bridge, and then she swore him to secrecy before he ran for help, a pact he gladly took to forsake his part in the whole mess. But that came after. For one moment before the crash, she'd had the sky, and her fate was sealed. One day, Xenia was going to fly.
Yes.
I will be giving away a signed copy of the book, so keep an eye out for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Samantha. Our final reader is Tara Campbell. Tara Campbell is a writer, teacher, Kimbilio Fellow, and fiction co-editor at Barrel House magazine. She teaches flash fiction and speculative fiction, and is the author of a novel, 2 hybrid collections of poetry and prose, and 2 short story collections. Her 6th book, City of Dancing Gargoyles, is forthcoming from SWSW in September 2024. Go, Tara.
All right. Thank you so much for everyone who has come out to listen tonight. I am the last reader, so we're ending in good time. In this novel that I'm going to read from, City of Dancing Gargoyles, it's the 22nd century in the Western U.S., and folks are dealing not only with climate change, so desertification, fires, rising sea levels, and all the rest, but also with the aftermath of secret alchemical testing that's been creating all kinds of havoc. So some of you'll hear some of that in this excerpt. The novel moves back and forth between human perspectives and other perspectives like gargoyles, butterflies, bats, kudzu. But here we're going to hear from the perspective of a young woman named Dolores, and this is the first time she and her mother encountered 2 gargoyles in a tumble-down barn in the desert. And I'm giving away an advanced reader copy of this novel as well as a magnet and sticker. So, get your name in that form. All right, so this is chapter 4. Mama stands still for a long while, hand over her mouth. She doesn't like when I interrupt her when she's thinking, so I hold her spear and wait for her to tell us what comes next. I'm thirsty, but I'm sure I'm just noticing it more now because she's worried about the canteen she dropped. I'm just glad it wasn't me who lost half our remaining water. What I want to say is, it's not your fault, or we've still got mine, but what I decide on is, was that really a dragon? She cuts me a brief sidelong look before turning her attention back to the barn. Use your head, girl. Wings, claws, serpent-like body. Those teeth. I lift my sunglasses and squint, trying to get a better look at the creatures messing around with our water inside the barn. I've never seen one up close is all, and I didn't know they talk. Plus, I could swear there's more than one animal in there. Mama's lips pressed tight. Dragons are different in different places. You know how they were. Didn't care about the people who lived in the test sites. Now she's talking about the government again. Their secret weapons testing decades ago. Nothing has been the same since, she says. And I just have to imagine it because in my almost 18 years, this is the only way I've ever known it. I suppose it must have been pretty terrifying to have all those lizards around you turn into dragons from one year to the next, or watch wolves float, or see statues sailing, or whatever. She never talks about it. Let's just go then, I say. We don't have enough. She's right. Although our canteens distill moisture from the air, without both of them, we won't have enough water to reach Carson City. I lean the spear toward her, and she takes it from my hand. Then I unsheathe my dagger and take a deep breath in and out, clenching my teeth to keep steady. It's small, she says. If it breathes fire, we'll go. She holds the spear tip forward, and I stay one step behind her as we approach the barn, both of us slightly crouched, knees bent, ready to spring in any direction. I hold my breath. The only sound is the crinkle of scraggly weeds beneath our feet. The inside of the barn is rank and shadowy, but I'm close enough to the entrance to make out two distinct figures inside. They stop whatever they were doing to watch us. I halt, and Mama does too. One of the figures steps out of the barn into the light, a long gray serpent creature with 4 legs attached to a scaly body. It has a long snout with a forked tongue darting out from between rows of sharp-looking teeth. Even though it just moved, it looks like it's made of stone. Mama steps directly in front of me, forcing me to lean to the side to see the creature. It's standing in front of the barn, looking at us out of its bulbous round eyes. Its stance doesn't seem hostile. It's not crouched like we are, and its long, pointy ears are swiveling, like it's listening. We don't mean you any harm, it says, its voice rasping like gravel. It nudges our canteen with a leg, more to focus our attention on it than to move it closer to us. This is yours. This isn't a question, but an acknowledgement of our need. Where are you going? It asks. I step out from behind Mama for a better look. I suppose the creature's wide-open eyes could mean wildness, but somehow they don't read that way to me. And Mama sticks her arm in front of me as though that could protect me. Where are you traveling to? It asks, again, louder. Its T's clack like tiny rock slides. I start to speak, but Mama pipes up. We're heading south. The second creature emerges from the barn, and we both shrink back from the lion-like creature striding on muscular legs, baring its teeth. It doesn't unfurl its wings, just raises and settles them slightly as though to remind us it has them. It's made of the same gray stone. We saw you before, it said. Why are you lying? The 4-legged serpent looks down briefly. There's something calm about it, unlike the winged lion bristling next to it. You're heading north, the snake thing says. Again, not a question. Mama takes a deep breath and a long time exhaling. Yes. There's water there? Another deep breath. Yes. The serpent's tail twitches. We will travel with you, it says, looping its tail through the canteen's strap. We don't have enough water for 4, Mama argues. Without this, the creature says, lifting the canteen, you don't have enough water for 2. I can tell she's more pissed than scared. After all her planning to get us out of Oakland when it flooded, then out of LA after the big earthquake, then out of Joshua Tree while it burned, now we're stuck here, sun-baked, covered in grit, rationing protein bars and staring down stone animals in a barn over our own water with only a spear and a dagger to defend ourselves. This was not the plan. But then what choice do we have? Mama nods and, without a word, turns to head in the direction we've been traveling these past weeks. I lengthen a couple of steps to reach her side. Behind us, the crunch of footsteps, the sweep of a serpent's tail over gritty soil. I glance back, see the canteen swinging from the snake beast's neck, the flutter of the lion's wings settling against its flanks. Our steps settle into a sloughing rhythm as we head north to Carson City. Thank you.
Whoa. Thank you, Tara. And thanks so much to everyone who came today.